So today's a sunny day after several cloudy days. So in our life we may have times when things aren't going so well, and then times when things are pretty sunny, as samsara goes up and down. So we have to try to make our minds more equal, not having so much reaction to the clouds and to the sunshine. So not letting ourselves be so influenced by what's happening externally to us, up and down in the seesaw of samsara. Because the more we go up and down, the more we generate attachment and anger again and again. The more we create karma, the more we have the causes for rebirth in samsara. So part of renunciation is, seeing that these ups and downs are really not so exciting, keeping our minds steady and firm and focused on our long-term goal. And so in that way, let's generate bodhicitta and keep our mind stable on that. Okay. So we were in page 93, the last paragraph, right? Okay. So now it's going to go through how we attain the 4 jhanas. Okay, so to attain the first jhana, coarse and refined engagement were necessary to direct the mind to the meditation object and to hold it there. Okay, now other factors perform these functions, so those 2 factors are released. Okay, so this is when we are entering into the 2nd jhana, because the way we left off, we left off yesterday where you had, gotten into access and then gone directly to the 2nd jhana. Yeah. So because new mental factors are taking over the function of keeping the mind on the object, coarse and refined engagement are no longer necessary, so they're not present in the 2nd jhana. Okay? Then due to this, inner stillness and clarity of mind become more prominent. Rapture and bliss are still present, and the one-pointed unification of mind is stronger, so the depth of the concentration increases. Okay? Whereas previously rapture and bliss arose due to being separated from the 5 hindrances, now they are present due to the power of samadhi itself. So you can see there's a shift there. Yeah, not just relief from the 5 hindrances, but the presence of the samadhi. As before, we familiarize and train in this jhana, developing the skills mentioned above, Remember those skills? They were on the previous page. Knowing the absorption factors that the jhana has, being able to enter it easily, steadying the mind in it, being able to emerge from it at the time that we had determined before entering into it, relaxing the mind and making it flexible, knowing and being comfortable with the object, and knowing whether a sign or whether one of the 3 characteristics is the object. And then resolving to elevate the mind to the next jhana. Acting with care to enter the jhana, maintaining continuity of the practice, and fulfilling the necessary and beneficial qualities for concentration. So you're doing all of that, okay, in the 2nd jhana. Okay, So although we initially experience the second jhana as much superior to the first, so after you've done all those things, okay, yeah, although we initially experience the second jhana as much superior to the first, after some time we see its faults. As concentration deepens, rapture makes the mind too exhilarated. Aware of a deeper level of concentration, we resolve to attain it. So this is part of the things that you do on the second jhana. With the intention to abandon rapture, we renew our practice with the meditation object, strengthening the faculty of concentration until rapture subsides. So it's interesting, the stronger the strong concentration seems to make the rapture subside. When it does, the third jhana dawns. Bliss and one-pointedness are still present. Mindfulness, introspective awareness, and equanimity now come to prominence, although they were certainly all very active before. Our body is blissful and we have a pleasant abiding. Free from rapture, bliss drenches and pervades our entire body. Cultivating skill in the various aspects of the third jhana, we train and develop mastery in it. So what question always comes, they say bliss drenches and pervades the entire body. Isn't that something from the desire realm? Yeah, but here you have a material realm mind. So why are you having, bliss that drenches the body? Unless the only thing I can come up with is that that's used as like an analogy for how wonderful it feels. It's not actually that your tactile consciousness is aware and feeling that and involved in that, because that would be very desire realm mind, but rather that it's your mental consciousness, feeling as if your body were drenched in bliss, or something, something to do with your mental consciousness being very blissful, and the body's used as an analogy. Okay, after mastering the third jhana, we see that it too is faulty because the feeling of bliss is comparatively coarse and subtle attachment to it may arise. A neutral feeling would be the best support for equanimity. Okay, so here, out of concern for having attachment to the bliss, then wanting to generate a neutral feeling. Yeah. That's because it's more stable. Knowing there is a superior state of concentration, we resolve to attain the fourth jhana and practice in order to release the bliss. When our faculties are strong enough, the bliss fades away and we enter the fourth jhana. Pleasure and pain vanish. Equanimity, which is far more peaceful than bliss. Okay, so here going for peaceful feeling rather than blissful feeling. Okay, so equanimity comes to the forefront. The firmness of equanimity fully purifies mindfulness, and one-pointed unification of mind is strong. Okay, so purifies the mindfulness, I would think, means that the mindfulness is no longer seeking some object of pleasure. It's completely content and peaceful. Now the meditator sits pervading this body with a pure, bright mind, so that there is no part of his whole body not pervaded by the pure, bright mind. This radiant mind abides in equanimity, undisturbed even by bliss. Okay, so again, I don't think in meditative equipoise paying attention to his body, yeah, but just the mind is pure and very bright and interesting, undisturbed even by bliss. Yeah, so here we see, how bliss can generate some attachment or something and disturb the mind. The jhanas are higher levels of the mundane mind. They are more focused, flexible, and have greater ability to perceive clearly than the confused, obscured mental states of the desire realm. People who have attained any of the 4 jhanas see sense pleasure as pointless and boring. Yeah? Imagine going in Manhattan telling people that on a Saturday night. They would much rather partake in jhana meditation, where they can remain for days and emerge refreshed and invigorated, unlike people who go on vacation and return exhausted. Some meditation masters encourage their disciples to use insight to analyze the jhanic stages after emerging from them. Examining states of samadhi in this way, practitioners see that even these blissful states are composed of various factors, arise due to causes and conditions, and are impermanent, impersonal, and not to be grasped at. Okay, looking even at these blissful states, they have various factors, so they're not some unified thing with an essence. They arise due to causes and conditions, which means that you have to struggle to create the causes and conditions. They're going to fade away because they're under the influence of causes and conditions. They're impersonal. They're not a self. They're not who we are. And so what's there to grasp at and hold on to, in these very blissful states of samadhi? So such analysis prevents meditators from craving and longing for these meditative experiences for their own sake. In other words, getting lost in samsara and craving for existence in these realms. So remember, craving for existence in the material realm and immaterial realm were 2 of the 10 fetters that the arhats have abandoned. It also prevents them from generating the erroneous view that these states are a self or an encounter with the Supreme Being. And I find this interesting because people have all sorts of experiences in meditation, and depending on how they describe those experiences to themselves, they act differently after they come out of the meditation. Okay, so if you have this blissful feeling and single-pointedness, and you say, now I've encountered the true inherently existent self and soul that is blissful, which if somebody has that kind of ideology beforehand, then yeah, this is it. Or if you've heard about liberation being blissful, then many people get into these states. They think, I've attained liberation. It's so wonderful, it's so blissful, no afflictions around. I've got it. Okay? Or maybe they say it's an encounter with God. Yeah? You get into some deep meditative state, your mind's very peaceful. Yeah, there's your feeling of bliss and light, and you say, I have an encounter with God. So it's very interesting, that it's not just the meditative experience that changes the person. It's what they think that meditative experience was after they come out of it. Yeah. Because I was really startled, and this is why, there's people who take Buddhist meditation outside of the Buddhist worldview, and you're going to get different results if you do that, because the meditators are operating within a different worldview. So I remember reading about one Jewish man who was doing Zen meditation, and he concluded, he had considered himself a Buddhist before, in a general way, and he concluded as a result of his Zen meditation that he believed in God and became a rabbi. Okay? So it's like if you have those kind of thoughts in your mind before and you haven't, clarified with them, then it's very easy when you have some meditative experience to put that interpretation onto it and then go act that way according to it afterwards. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, because we always have the idea, once I have the experience, then for sure I'll know what it is, and that'll be it. Not necessarily, which is why we need to be under the guidance of a teacher who can help us understand these experiences. Okay, I heard the story about one of my Western friends. I don't know if it was him or somebody else he knows, went to see one of the Tibetan meditators who just happened to mention that he had a vision of Tara in his meditation. And the Westerner was all excited. You saw Tara. You saw Tara. This is, kind of, what does that mean? What level are you at now? What have you attained? And this meditator just said, well, I had the vision. I don't know if it was really Tara or if it was just an appearance to my mind. But it doesn't really matter because I've still got to keep meditating on, doing what I was doing before. And I thought, wow, there's somebody who has the ability to remain focused and not get sidetracked by these experiences and then thinking, now I've got somewhere, I'm this, I'm that. Okay. Yeah. I remember going to one conference one time and there was a man. I don't know if he considered himself Buddhist or not, but he went to a Buddhist center and he had some kind of vision of embracing Tara and, and it was so blissful and he was wondering, kind of getting somewhere on the path. And I just kind of listened and didn't say much. And then somebody else came along, a well-known Buddhist practitioner. I said, oh, that's very good. Maybe you really did see Tara. And I'm going in my mind, why are you encouraging this kind of thing, Because seeing Tara isn't the purpose of the path. But maybe he was doing it to encourage this man in his meditation, hoping that he would go back and do something else. But I was rather puzzled by it. Okay, and there's, what's the book? What is it? After the Bliss, the Laundry? After the Ecstasy, the Laundry. Yeah, so when you read some of the experiences of the people that people had in there, you can see that people are really struggling to understand what an experience is, and that very often we're really tempted to describe it in a certain way and then to think that we've attained some kind of permanent level. And then when it becomes obvious that we haven't, then we crash. Yeah? So it's much better in our meditation, to just say, oh, that was a wonderful experience. That's good. I'm glad to know those kind of things exist. And I've got to keep on meditating and keep our mind quite stable. Furthermore, such analysis prevents the temptation of conceit to arise. Instead, they see once again that everything lacks self. So, when you do this kind of analysis after coming out of the meditative states, then it becomes clear. Everything, there's no I in any of those factors that constitute these blissful meditative experiences. So if there's no I, then why am I getting conceited about it? Yeah, and because this is also a big distraction in meditation, that we get quite full of ourselves and think, I'm a great meditator and I had this experience and I'm better than the others, and pretty soon I'm going to be, have the path of seeing. And yeah, because we all want to attain these stages so much that then, some experience, okay, by Thursday I'll have the path of seeing, So, just kind of calm down, keep practicing, keep your mind steady. Yeah. Okay, then the 4 immaterial absorptions. Beyond the 4 jhanas are the 4 immaterial states, deeper states of concentration in which mental peace remains undisturbed. Okay? While advancing from one jhana to the next involves refining the mind by successively abandoning coarse mental factors, sequentially progressing through the 4 immaterial states entails refining the object of meditation. So here's a difference between them. The jhanic stages, you were refining the mind and the mental factors that were present. In the immaterial states, you're refining the object. And that's what's causing the depth of the concentration to change. Taking their names from their meditation objects, the 4 immaterial states are called the base of infinite space, base of infinite consciousness, base of nothingness, and base of neither discrimination nor non-discrimination. This last state is also called the peak of samsara, due to being the most refined mental state within samsara. To go into the material absorptions, we focus on a luminous sphere or radiant light, blue for example, which is the counterpart sign of our jhanic meditation. Yeah, so you have, remember we had the 3 signs, what was the first one? The preliminary work sign, the learning sign, and the counterpart sign. So you have here the counterpart sign, yeah, and you expand, so it's like this little dot or something that your mind's completely absorbed as like a color, and you expand it so it's as vast as space. Undivided, seamless, and pervading all of space, blue is the only thing in our field of awareness. We absorb in this vast blueness with the mind of the 4th jhana. To enter the absorption of infinite space, we consider that while the 4th jhana is peaceful, it is nevertheless faulty because its object is a form, and a meditative absorption without form would be superior and more peaceful. So it's actually a form for mental consciousness. It's not an external form. But, wouldn't it be more peaceful in, to have something that is just one undivided, seamless whole instead of, your nimitta, which is different from everything else. Okay? We resolve to attain the base of infinite space. And here, actually, I think this thought process, although it said, you enter the 4th jhana, I think this thought process has to go on before you before you start your meditation session. Because again, once you're in the jhana, the 4th jhana, you're not going to be thinking. Okay? So we resolve to attain the base of infinite space, and resolving, let this form vanish, we mentally remove the blue pervading all space. So you've had this little thing of blue, you make it fill all of space, and then you take away the blue. So what remains, all that remains as an object of awareness is the infinite space where the bright light had been. Okay. The mind now immerses in this infinite expanse of space with no perception of a sign at all. Okay? So we thus enter and dwell in the base of infinite space, the first immaterial absorption. Yeah, so there's no sign that's separate from the whole expanse there, rather the expanse of space is your object, and that's what your mind is absorbed in. Okay? When we are accustomed to infinite space, we reflect that consciousness is aware of infinite space. It is as if consciousness pervades that infinite space. Shifting our attention from infinite space to the infinity of consciousness pervading it, we make a determination to attain the absorption on infinite consciousness. By means of this determination and repeated practice, the perception of space falls away, and there is just consciousness extending infinitely, and we enter the second immaterial state. Okay? When we master the absorption on infinite consciousness, again, all these things about being able to enter it, keep it stable, emerge from it after the requisite amount of time, analyzing the factors, all these kinds of things. Okay? Then we reflect that it lacks, the infinite consciousness lacks obstruction and impediment. We now focus on the unimpeded nature of infinite consciousness until the awareness of consciousness falls away and there remains only the awareness of nothingness. Okay? Focusing on the non-existence of the consciousness of infinite space, we enter the absorption on the base of nothingness. Okay? After becoming familiar with this, we turn our attention to the consciousness that is aware of nothingness. That consciousness is very subtle, and when we focus on it, we enter the fourth immaterial state that has as its object the consciousness that is aware of nothingness. This absorption is so subtle and refined that when in it we cannot say whether discrimination is present or not. So neither discrimination nor non-discrimination is the object of that absorption. That's how it got its name. Beings born in the immaterial realms, due to having attained these states of meditative absorption when they were human beings, stay in these states of samadhi for eons. Okay? So you attain those states as a human being, you're born in them in your next rebirth because you attained it and kept that realization until the end of your human life. Yeah, then you're born in those God realms and you stay there for eons. Yeah, they say it's very nice. But the problem is when the eons are over, it's like last night's dream and it's gone. And then you fall down. When the karma to abide in them is exhausted, those beings take rebirth in other samsaric realms. When the Buddha was still a bodhisattva, he trained with 2 meditation teachers and mastered the absorption on neither discrimination nor non-discrimination. Remember, he went to 2 teachers before he did the ascetic practice. So he mastered that state. Realizing that his mind was still not completely free from defilements, he respectfully departed. Under the Bodhi tree, he perfected wisdom and insight, attaining full awakening. Okay, so that's the difference there. Then, the 8 meditative liberations. Okay, so the Buddha spoke of 8 meditative liberations. Yeah, vimoksha or vimoksha. Deep states of concentration bringing temporary liberation from defilements. Okay? So again, they aren't nirvana, but they bring temporary liberation from defilements. So the first 3, okay, are the 4 jhanas, using 1 in internal form, interpreted by the commentary as a color in one's own body. This is according to the Pali tradition. Okay. The second meditative liberation is, the 4 jhanas using an external form interpreted as a colored kasina or a color in another's body. Yeah. Third, the 4 jhanas using the beautiful interpreted as a pure, beautiful colored kasina or the 4 Brahma Viharas. Okay. Then 4, 5, 6, and 7 are the 4 immaterial absorptions. And 8 is the cessation of discrimination and feeling, also called the attainment of cessation. Okay. So the temporary suspension of all manifest activity of the 6 consciousnesses, requires both concentration and insight. Unlike the first 7 meditative liberations, which can be attained by ordinary beings, it can be attained only by non-returners and arhats who have mastered the 4 jhanas and the 4 immaterial states. Okay. So there's a big difference, with this 8th one, the cessation of discrimination and feeling, also called the attainment of cessation, Nirodha Samapatti. If we look in our classification of phenomena under abstract composites, Nirodha Samapatti is one of them. Why is it considered an abstract composite and not a consciousness? Because all the manifest activity of the 6 consciousnesses is temporarily suspended. Yeah, so it's considered an abstract phenomena. Okay, so the first 3, can be attained by ordinary beings, and they are practiced by non-returners who manifest a body, and arhats who are free from obscurations to absorption. Okay, so only certain non-returners and arhats want to enter into that, the cessation of discrimination and feeling. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And they're called liberations, because they're free from the manifest afflictions of whatever their level was there. So all these, some are material realm, some immaterial realm. Their different levels of afflictions have been temporarily suppressed. So that's why they're called liberations. So so this absence of all manifest activity of the mind. Yeah, so it requires that you have serenity and insight. And as with when you've entered into the previous states of concentration, at least the immaterial realms. I'm not sure about the material realms, but at least the immaterial spheres, I should say. Yeah, spheres of consciousness. The breath stops. So there's stories of people who've been meditating, non-returners and arhats and certain bodhisattvas who've been meditating in this 8th liberation, and meditative liberation. People coming along and thought they were dead, and then taking the body and trying to burn it, but the body wouldn't burn. Interesting. Okay. So the cessation of discrimination and feeling is not a support for any kind of higher attainment. So, because arhats also enter it, and they've reached the end of their vehicle, they're not trying to get anything higher. So it's not totally clear why somebody in the hearer vehicle would seek this cessation of discrimination and feeling. Okay? But it's by stopping the gross mental states, it stops the afflictions that are due to them. But an arhat's already stopped those afflictions, so, it's not totally clear why the arhats would practice them. In the, let's read the next paragraph and then I'll come to this. So, Maitreya's Abhisamaya Alankara, that's the ornament of clear realization, in the Sanskrit tradition also explains the 8 meditative liberations and defines them as exalted knowers not polluted by the afflictions of their own level. Okay? Calling them exalted knowers, kind of implies that they are for Aryas. Okay? So the first 3 are called the 3 paths of emanation, because by abandoning attachment to forms, bodhisattvas eliminate obstacles to emanating many forms that fulfill the needs of sentient beings. So an arhat or a non-returner may do this, because they want to be able to, these first 3, they want to be able to manifest different forms. It's a sign of their meditative dexterity. For a bodhisattva, there's a real purpose because they want to be able to manifest many kinds of forms that go out and meet the needs of sentient beings. Okay, so here they, 1, emanate many forms while their own bodies remain visible to others. That's the first meditative liberation. The second one, meditative liberation, is they emanate many forms while their bodies are not visible to others. The third is they counteract their like and dislike for emanating beautiful and unattractive forms, respectively. So bodhisattvas practice the 8 meditative liberations and the 9 meditative absorptions for the benefit of others. So that's another difference, that the hearers practice these, just as a manifestation of their own dexterity in concentration. Bodhisattvas do it for the benefit of others. Okay, and you can see how especially those first 3 are going to be important for bodhisattvas, so that they can really work for the benefit of others and accumulate a lot of merit. Because that's how bodhisattvas accumulate a lot of merit, according to the Sutrayana path, is they manifest all these bodies that then go to Pure Lands and make offerings and go to different realms in samsara and benefit sentient being. So they, collect incredible, unbelievable merit by manifesting all these bodies. So there's a real purpose for the bodhisattvas in doing these practices. Okay. So in general, actually the first 8, when you talk about the 9 serial absorptions, then you have the 4 material realms, for material spheres, 4 immaterial spheres, and the cessation of discrimination and feeling. Okay, so in general, the first 8 of those are not Arya's path. Okay, but for bodhisattvas who meditate on them, they are. Yeah, that's why they're called exalted wisdoms. So they definitely have the unity of serenity and insight on emptiness. Okay, so they're usually considered to be a abstract composite, not a consciousness. That's what most of the schools consider them. Okay, but for the Prasangika Madhyamaka, it's an exalted wisdom focused on reality, so it is a consciousness. Okay, that has been attained, that has been attained through absorbing in the peak of samsara, and an Arya path. Okay? Or I'm sorry, wisdom that has been attained. Yeah, so it's an exalted wisdom on reality, on emptiness. And it's an absorption on the peak of samsara as well as an Arya path. So that's got to be really something. And you see why only Arya bodhisattvas can do the cessation, not the lower bodhisattvas, do the cessation on discrimination and the cessation of discrimination on feeling, because they've already realized emptiness. Yeah, if other people do that, yeah, well, it's only that last one is only for Aryas. Only Aryas can do it. Yeah, the other people can only get to the peak of samsara. This is neither discrimination or non-discrimination. Okay, so only Aryas can do this one because it is an Arya path. So at the same time they're meditating this extremely refined samsaric consciousness, their object is also emptiness. Yeah, so they've got to be quite skilled meditators and high bodhisattvas to do this, because normally you can't, if you haven't realized emptiness, you wouldn't use any of the material spheres of mind, as the mind to meditate on emptiness, because it's too subtle, too refined. Okay, is that clear to people? Yeah. Okay, now the super knowledges. It's very interesting. Everything seems, oh yes, I can understand this, until we get to levels of concentration, which is outside the realm of our desire realm experience. And then everything is so unfamiliar to us. We say, that real? Can people really do that? Here's where some of our doubt comes in, because it's so unlike the desire realm. Okay, but there's many beings who have attained these realms of concentration, and they say we've also attained them in previous lives, been born in those realms. The karma expired and we fell down. Okay. So the super knowledges. Well, the most important aim of the Buddhist teachings is ceasing rebirth under the influence of ignorance and kama and attaining nibbana. The suttas praise other spiritual accomplishments as well. One is mastery over dimensions of the mind, so the jhanas and the four immaterial absorptions, which are praised for their peace and ease. Another is mastery over nature and external phenomena, gained by actualizing the first 5 super knowledges. Okay, so these are actually mentioned in the sutras by the Buddha himself. This isn't commentarial. A byproduct of samadhi, these 5 give meditators supernormal physical and mental powers, enabling them to perform feats that cannot be explained by scientific means. While some non-Buddhists see these as the purpose of the path, the Buddha emphasized that only nibbana is the actual liberation from dukkha. Thus, when cultivating the super knowledges, it is essential to have a good motivation and to take care not to fall prey to conceit and clinging. Okay, quite important here. Compassionately using these powers to benefit others and spread the Buddha's teachings is meaningful. Yeah, but just attaining these realizations so you can be somebody and get people to make offerings to you and show you respect and so on, that's not a suitable motivation. Because, you can harm people, you can create a lot of negative karma and then go kerplunk in your next life. So chapter 12 of the Visuddhimagga describes the rigorous training necessary to do this, attaining each jhana using various kasinas. Oh, I sure did. Okay, so the super knowledges are: 1, supernormal powers. Okay, so these are cultivated based on the powerful concentration of the 4th jhana. I think in the Sanskrit tradition, it says you can get them in earlier than that, so there may be some difference here. They enable us to defy ordinary scientific laws by gaining mastery over nature. With them, we can make our body into many bodies and then absorb those bodies back into a single body. We can become invisible, appearing and vanishing at will, pass through walls and mountains with ease, go under the earth, walk on water, and fly in space. So some people who believe that Jesus went to India during the 12 years think that he may have learned these kinds of things there and then come back and been able to walk on water and such. Okay? But these are powers that, anybody can attain, whether they're a Buddhist or not, just by actualizing, according to the Pali tradition, the 4th jhana. Okay, so chapter 12 of the Visuddhimagga describes the rigorous training necessary to do this, attaining each jhana using various kasinas, progressing through all 8 absorptions in forward and reverse order. Okay, so not just using one meditative object to attain, one of the levels, but using different ones. Then being able to progress, from the first material sphere up through the peak of samsara, back down again. Okay. Then alternating various absorptions, going from the first to the third to the immaterial realms, back down again, back up again. Okay. Entering and emerging from absorptions very quickly, so it not taking you a long time to go into the absorption, but you just sit down and boing, there you go. Okay, and so forth. Yeah, so with this extraordinary mental power, we then direct our mind to the exercise of the supernormal powers. Through the force of intention and based upon this profound acuity and agility and samadhi, we gain the supernormal powers described above. Okay, so you gain some mastery over the elements due to the acuity of the mind. But it probably requires a lot of training, I would think. Yeah, not something that just comes automatically. Because we hear about these resultant things as if they, you gain concentration, then boom, you get them. No, you have to train and train and train. Okay, then the second one, the divine ear or clairaudience, is the ability to hear sounds in the human world, heavenly realms, and other realms and directions where sentient beings dwell. We can hear these faraway sounds as easily as if they were nearby. So how do you think a bodhisattva would use that? Yeah, to listen. Yeah, to listen to teachings wherever they are. Yeah.
Listen for cries for help.
Yeah, listening for cries for help. Kuan Yin is the one who hears our cries. So, yeah. And then, of course, with the supernormal powers, being able to go to different places and do different things to benefit sentient beings, not just showing off. Then the third is understanding the minds of others, is the ability to know the mental states of others. We know minds affected and unaffected by attachment, anger, and confusion. Okay, so you know like what level kind of people are at when their mind is under the influence of affliction, when it's not. They know exalted and unexalted minds. Of course, it depends too, not just on concentration, but on your level of realization. Because it's said that, when you're progressing up the paths and stages on the Bodhisattva path, you can only know the level of realization of people who are equal to you or lower than you. Okay, so here, exalted and unexalted minds, that's going to be limited to by what level of realization you have. You can know concentrated and unconcentrated minds, liberated and unliberated minds. Others' mental states are known as clearly as seeing a spot on our own face reflected in a clean, bright mirror. So, who is spying on my mind? You hope it's somebody with a whole lot of compassion. Yeah? And then fourth, the recollection of past lives is the ability to know the particular details of our own lives for eons in the past. Okay? And then the fifth is with the divine eye, we can see beings dying and reappearing in their next life according to their karma. We know what actions sentient beings did to cause rebirth in particular realms, and we can see events in faraway places and other dimensions in the universe. Dharma teachers with this ability may use it to know the karma of sentient beings, and thus who they will be able to benefit, and which beings are ripe to enter the Dharma path. Yeah, so it helps them really use their time and energy in the best way with the people who are ripe and mature and ready to receive benefit. Okay. Then with supernormal powers, they will go to these places to teach those beings. Okay. And then 6, unlike other super knowledges, knowing the destruction of all pollutants does not require the full power of samadhi as a prerequisite. Now these last 3, where did we hear them before? These last 3, 4, 5, and 6. Yeah, they come with they're part of the 10 powers of the Buddha. So they're fully developed on the 10 powers of the Buddha. And they're also the 3 higher knowledges, that the Buddha attained the evening of the night of his awakening. Okay, so this last one, this last one's interesting because it's the knowledge that you've attained liberation, but you don't have to have these high states of concentration to have it. Okay, so unlike other super knowledges, knowing the destruction of all pollutants does not require the full power of samadhi as a prerequisite. We can attain it on the basis of any of the 4 jhanas, or according to the commentary with access concentration. So that's serenity. This super knowledge realizes the liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, nibbana, which is totally free from all defilements. So the object of this super knowledge of the destruction of all pollutants, is liberation by mind, liberation by wisdom, meaning nibbana, which is totally free of all defilements. Okay? Liberation by mind usually means, attainment of concentration. And then liberation by wisdom is having eliminated all the fetters and pollutants. While the Buddha taught the 3 spiritual accomplishments of nibbana, meditative absorptions, and super knowledges, he did not expect all his disciples to accomplish the latter 2. Okay? So he was really aimed at nibbana. That was the chief thing. He knew his followers had different aptitudes and interests. Someone who attained nibbana, but not the other 2 abilities, is one liberated by wisdom. Okay? because they haven't attained the the liberation by mind, because they haven't attained the jhanic stages. Okay, so they're only liberated by wisdom. Okay, but they're still arhats. This person may attain jhana, or he may attain liberation without jhana. Here it says he may attain jhana. Then why does it say he doesn't have the other two abilities? Oh, maybe because he hasn't attained the fourth jhana. And liberation by mind, liberation by wisdom is an arhat who's attained the fourth jhana. Perhaps that's the reason why. Because, no, maybe not. Because all it says that, the first 5, you require the fourth jhana, but the 6th one, it says it doesn't require the full power of samadhi as a prerequisite. Okay, so we have to check this. Yeah. Or, what it could be? It could be somebody who's attained nirvana on the basis of access concentration. That would fit, because they don't have the full power of but then maybe there's something screwy here, because before it ended. Anyway, we'll figure that out later. Okay, so someone who has attained nibbana but not the other two abilities is one liberated by wisdom. This person may attain jhana, or he may attain liberation without jhana, developing wisdom and eradicating defilements on the basis of access concentration. Okay, so that makes sense. Then the above thing, where we can attain it on 6, talking about the knowing of destruction and of all pollutants. We can attain it on the basis of any of the 4 jhanas, or according to the commentary with access concentration. This super knowledge realizes the liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom.
Because it talks about they don't have the other 2 abilities. And they have one of the abilities, that number 6, but not the other one.
Oh, it could be that. That you developed the meditative absorptions, but didn't do the superpowers, super knowledges. Anyway, okay. So those who attain nibbana, as well as various meditative absorptions, have mastery over a wide range of mental states, and are called those liberated in both ways. So I think what it is there's an error in number 6, because those liberated in both ways, that's liberated by mind, liberated by wisdom, okay? And so they have the meditative absorptions. Yeah, so, yeah. Then Shravakas who attain nibbana, as well as mastery over mental states and the super knowledges that follow from them, are called arhats, having the 6 super knowledges. In Theravada countries, we find all 3 persons to this day. Okay, so we have, going backwards, we have the arhats having the 6 super knowledges. So they've attained mastery of all the mental states and the super knowledges. Then we have those liberated in both ways, by mind and by wisdom, and they attain nibbana as well as the meditative absorptions. Okay, and then you have one liberated by wisdom who has attained nibbana, but not those other two, which would be somebody who attained nibbana with access concentration. Okay, so now that makes sense. So then the error is, just as it's written up on paragraph 6, we can attain it on the basis of any four jhanas or according to the commentary with access concentration. This super knowledge realizes the liberation by mind, liberation by wisdom, only if it was realized with one of the four concentrations. Yeah, if it was realized through access concentration, then it's the arhat is one liberated by wisdom. Okay? So that's clarified. That needs to be clarified above, in the language. It's not so clear. My fault. Okay. So then I heard about an Indian laywoman named Deepama, who was renowned as a stream enterer. She passed away a little over 20 years ago. At the request of her meditation teacher, she mastered all 8 meditative absorptions and the 5 super knowledges. She would resolve to sit in a particular absorption for a specific amount of time and emerge from it exactly at that time. By the way, part of a biography about her has been published, and I think the copy's in our library. Yeah. Okay, her teacher attested to her powers. One day he saw her floating in the sky above the treetops outside his window, and at another time watched her dive into the ground and emerge from it. One day her teacher and a professor arranged for somebody to be with her in one location, but she arrived for an appointment with the professor 10 miles away at the same time. So she had that superpower of manifesting bodies. There are many such stories about her, yet she always remained a humble and sincere Dharma practitioner, extremely humble. Yeah. She died in an interesting manner. I think this is fascinating. She bowed to the Buddha and passed away before she could stand up. Wow. That's definitely how to do it, isn't it? Yeah? Okay. The first 5 super knowledges are mundane powers attained through the 4th jhana. Okay. The knowledge of the destruction of all pollutants is supramundane. While non-Buddhists may actualize the first 5, only Buddhists will develop the insight and wisdom necessary to attain the 6th, an arhat's liberation. The last 3 super knowledges, recollection of past lives, knowledge of the passing away and rebirth of beings according to their karma, and destruction of the pollutants, are the 3 higher knowledges that the Buddha gained under the Bodhi tree. Okay. I'm remembering now that when I was in Thailand, the arhat, the people who attained arhatship on the basis of access concentration, they called them dry, wizened arhats because their minds were not moistened by concentration. Because they say entering the jhanas makes your mind so much more flexible and moist and malleable. And their minds, because they had only access concentration, although that's still pretty good, they were called dry, wizened arhats. But it's interesting. I found it quite interesting because you can have many different kinds of arhats with different levels of abilities who have all realized nibbana, but they have different levels of abilities. So, the end of the here vehicle, not everybody is exactly the same. Yeah. At the end of the bodhisattva vehicle, they're all Buddhas and they all have the same realizations. Okay. So some difference there. Sometimes 2 other powers, insight knowledge and mind-made body are included at the beginning of the list of super-knowledges, bringing the total to 8. So insight knowledge knows this body of mind made of material form, consisting of the 4 great elements, procreated by a mother and father, and built up out of boiled rice and porridge, and maybe some tofu and chocolate cake, is subject to impermanence. And this consciousness of mind is supported by it and bound up with it. So this person has a realization of selflessness. They have the insight wisdom. Due to the ability of jhana, we can create a mind-made body, a physical body with limbs and sense sources. Let me change my pitch here. I want my voice to make it to tomorrow noon, then it can stop. Okay, a physical body and sense sources that is an exact replica of our own body. Once the mind-made body is extracted from the physical body, like a reed extracted from a sheath, we mentally control it because it has no mind of its own, even though to others it looks like a normal body moved by its own consciousness. Okay. The mind-made body can travel to distant places while we remain in the monastery. It can appear to teach Dharma elsewhere, and when it has served its purpose, we absorb it back into our own body. Well, it's not a Buddha's emanation body, because this can be done by other people, you know. Yeah, yeah. Well, it said that this is added on at the beginning of the list, but it sounds very much like that one of being able to multiply your body and then, make more than one body and then absorb it back in. Yeah.
This one needs you to direct it.
Yeah. The other one, it wasn't clear who directs it when you make. I would think that it would still need the person who's emanating the body to direct it, because there's only one person there. If it had its own consciousness, it would be a different person. And you would have 2 mind streams, and that's not the case.
So all Buddha emanation bodies are coming out of that mind. That's true. It's what you say. I never thought of
Yeah.
that before.
Yeah. Yeah. But, the depth of the Buddha's realization, it's not like the Buddha's, somewhere, I don't know, at the UN, or with the Wizard of Oz and pulling the levers, and it's like, oh, I got to control all these infinite bodies and send messages out to them, hold on, I'll be with you in a minute. Yeah, don't talk, don't do anything, pretend you're meditating, so I got to catch up with these other ones. Yeah. So I don't think it's like that. Yeah. With the Buddha, because the Buddha's mind isn't tied to any kind of body, a flesh and bones body. Here, these people's minds are still tied to a flesh and bone body. Okay, so it's going to be different. Huh? Yes, it is. Yeah.
So in the list of 6, this would be included in the first one, but in the list of 8, make it separate.
That's what it sounds like to me, yeah. Okay. Okay, so that's the mind-made body. According to the Sanskrit tradition, cultivating the first 5 super knowledges is essential for bodhisattvas to be of great benefit to sentient beings and to accumulate the extensive merit necessary to attain full awakening. So, when you really think of what you can do with those super knowledges, you see how it's very important for bodhisattvas to have them. Because if you're only working with one body, you only create merit and benefit sentient beings with one body. And for a bodhisattva who really wants to benefit all sentient beings, that just won't do. That's way too limited. So for that bodhisattva, attaining the deeper levels of concentration in order to attain the super knowledges is a must. They must do that kind of thing. In contrast to arhats who don't necessarily have to do that. By means of clairaudience, bodhisattvas listen to teachings given in other places. Understanding all languages, they hear a wide range of teachings and can speak to students in their own language. Through knowledge of others' minds, bodhisattvas directly know others' interests and dispositions, as well as their emotional patterns and habitual thoughts, so they can teach them skillfully. By knowing their past lives, bodhisattvas can seek out spiritual mentors to study with, dharma practices that they've done before and are familiar with, and spiritual friends they knew in previous lives, so that they can practice together with those, and also other sentient beings that they have strong karmic connections with so they can benefit them. So this enables them to progress rapidly on the path. The divine eye enables bodhisattvas to know others' karmic tendencies and their receptivity to the Dharma, so they can interact with them accordingly and teach, them appropriately. They also know the karmic results of actions people are creating now, enabling them to guide disciples more effectively. Like, don't do that. I see the karmic result and you don't want to have that. They can locate their previous disciples and then, because of their karmic connection, help them in their present life forms. The knowledge of the destruction of pollutants is knowledge of their own level of spiritual attainments and the paths they have attained. While the Buddha possessed these super knowledges, he did not display them to show off and prohibited his followers from doing so. To ensure that monastics remain humble, one of our precepts is not to publicly proclaim one is an arhat or has these special abilities. Throughout the ages, the Buddha's disciples with these abilities have used them discreetly without drawing attention to themselves, working in unobtrusive ways to benefit others and spread the Dharma. Attaining these powers through samadhi without having the correct motivation can be dangerous. If someone has not cultivated compassion, he may use these powers to gain power, respect, or material gain, which are very far from the goal of the Buddhist path, liberation and full awakening. A few ordinary people have some clairvoyance by the power of karma. They may know a future event or someone's thoughts. These karmic abilities are limited in scope, are lost at death, and what they perceive may not be completely accurate. Possessing them does not indicate that a person has spiritual realizations. And I've talked to people who have told me that when they were little, they had these kind of abilities, especially to sense things that were going to happen in the future, and that or to know what was going on in other people's minds. And they had these abilities, due to karma, but it was very distressing for them, and they didn't want to have these abilities because they didn't know what to do with them. So they tried to just ignore that, because you have that ability. Do you tell the person? Do you not tell the person? And then also because sometimes these powers are not totally accurate, you know, then if you tell somebody something and it's not accurate, or, you know, you get riled up because of something but it's not accurate. So it can be very distressing if you don't have the proper spiritual framework within which to have these and know how to use them. Okay. So, how about if we stop now and then we'll start the or we could do a little bit more. Start the introduction to the Sanskrit tradition.
Question about that?
Yeah, sure.
I'm puzzled that because they are on the list of the 10 powers of the Buddha,
Mhm.
they show up here and
Mhm.
hold that. Think about that.
Well, they're different levels of realizations. You know, when a Buddha has these powers, there's no obscuration, completely perfect motivation. These abilities happen spontaneously, effortlessly, and expansively throughout the universe. With Aryas who have these powers, they're on a much more limited level. You know, they don't manifest infinite bodies throughout the universe. They're not capable of it. Remember, when we talk about the 10 bhumis, there are 12 characteristics that that increase as you go up the bhumis. So the first one, you can make 100 emanations, second one 1,000. So, you know, when we hear about these abilities, it isn't, you know, that you attain this and everybody can do exactly the same thing. Yeah. It's like everybody may get a college diploma in a certain field, but they aren't all exactly alike in their abilities and what they can do. So similar people can actualize these, you know, but according to many other factors, they may take more or less effort, be more or less expansive, but they certainly can't even compare to the Buddha's abilities to do all of these things. Okay? Because bodhisattvas especially, you know, they have to still have some effort to exert this. It's not totally effortless. Yeah?
Does there have to be anything on the side of the recipient? Say if a bodhisattva was to speak to the students in their own language, is that coming totally from the side of the bodhisattva?
It sounds like it's coming from the side of the bodhisattva, although I'm sure if the student were multilingual, it would help. Yeah. Okay.
When in our sadhanas, after the light nectar come into our bodies and we experience our minds being clear and blissful,
Mm-hmm.
does that have any characteristics of the bliss that's in these? Is it a different experience that we're supposed to be having, or at some point we get our sadhana so deep
Okay.
that we have that experience?
Yeah. So the word bliss comes in many different contexts in Buddhism, and it can refer to different things at different times. You know, so, you know, one bliss is the bliss of serenity, but I'm sure the bliss of the third material sphere is different. Yeah. And then the bliss when you practice Tantra is different again. Yeah, so there's many different kinds of bliss.
And then the other question I had, when the meditators are in these deep states where they're going through all of these realms and stuff, the physical body, what's it doing? I mean, it's kind of sitting there for days and weeks.
Yeah.
Nourishment and water and
Okay, so what happens if you go into meditation for a week? Don't you get hungry? You know how when we make the offerings, they symbolize different things, and so the food is we think the food is the food of samadhi, because when you're in these deep states, the nourishment kind of happens by itself. The samadhi itself nourishes your body. Yeah. So it's quite interesting in the books written by the Thai woman that I mentioned. I can't remember or pronounce her name. But she talks about some of these meditators in Thailand who would go into these kinds of samadhis and remain for a long time. And one thing I remember is that when a lot of them, what motivated them to generate deep concentration was they would be meditating out in the jungle and they would hear lions and tigers and bears, ho ho, you know, and they would get frightened. I don't know if they had bears in Thailand, but, you know, they would definitely have tigers and other beings. And they would get frightened, you know, and that was an impetus for them to generate samadhi, because the tigers would never attack somebody who was meditating in samadhi. Somehow, the tigers just walked by. I don't know, maybe licked them or something. But, you know, they would not harm the people meditating in samadhi. So that was a big incentive for the forest meditators to gain samadhi. Hmm? Okay.
Is there a book in the Tibetan tradition about biography or something where these experiences a little bit more described?
I haven't read a lot of the biographies, so I'll leave that to you to read them and then tell us, okay? Yeah? You know, I really don't know. It certainly wouldn't be written in somebody's autobiography. It would have to be their disciples who said this after they were dead. You know, certainly not while they were alive. So,
They do talk about meditators living on
Chulen, yeah. There's a pill that you can make that's blessed in a certain way. It has the extract from flowers and minerals and things. And so a lot of times meditators will use these. It's the Chulen practice. It means taking the essence. And so then you don't depend on food. You can, then this is if you're meditating in a place, you know, far away where nobody's bringing you food offerings. You can exist on the Chulen pills. Okay. So we'll start with the Sanskrit tradition in the afternoon.